from the First Street Studios in South Tampa, Florida, it's time for another round of Last Call 76 with your host, Dan, Jay, and behind the camera, the one and only Jess.
What is this? You've been talking all sorts of smack on the Dallas Cowboys on your Facebook page, but you're rocking their colors, my brother.
Look, I've made some posts to improve our show, right? Get some fan involvement, friends involvement. And we're about to have a good discussion here about what's going on in the NFL right now, in our opinion. Okay? But I grew up in Dallas, in Garland and Richardson. I was a diehard Cowboy fan. I explained this to you, right? Mm-hmm. And I have a problem with the Jimmy Johnson divorce with Jerry Jones, right? After that, I don't think they've delivered the way I think the Cowboy fan should. So I'm going to leave it there, and we'll discuss it why. But I still think they're in a really good position this year.
But I will say, before we get into this topic, though, be that as it may, that's smooth. This is smooth, man. We look like the buyout that Jimbo Fisher just got that we're going to talk about in a future video, man. We got a new sponsor.
Yeah, we got two new sponsors.
Two new sponsors, exactly.
So we'll talk about this one. We got Minx Inc. that's providing our clothing. We had to go with somebody that our topics, they had to be able to deliver a shirt to us overnight or at least in a day or two. So we'll talk more about that later, but so our clothing now will be basically in the colors of our conversations we talk about for the most part, just because we're a sports show and we want to look the part. And now we got the sponsor we need. Sounds good? All right, what else, bro?
Well, here's the whole thing. Okay, we are, for most teams, 10 weeks for the NFL season. For some that have had the bye, they're at 9. Right now, we can conclusively say that only Philadelphia and maybe Kansas City have established themselves as a team. And I say maybe because those teams have had some warts. There's that inexcusable, unquestionable, really head-puzzling loss that the Eagles had to the Jets and Zach Wilson. And as you've seen on our short, Zach Wilson couldn't score a touchdown if you gave him the football first and goal at the 5-yard line every possession. But the Eagles still look the team to beat in the NFC. And the Chiefs, the other team in the AFC, even their offense is awful. I mean, they might as well truck Taylor Swift out there and put her in pads, never play wide receiver. She couldn't be any worse than some of the players.
They're not that bad.
A little bit of an exaggeration, embellishment, but it sounded cute on the video. But I want to take a look at some of these teams, though, Dan, that there's no saying neither fish nor fowl. And what that saying means is they're tough to identify.
Right now.
Could this change with the final 7 weeks of the regular season? Sure. And they've got some games coming up that are very, very telling about what their future is. And I'm going to let you kick off. We're going to pick one from the AFC and one from the NFC. We had this discussion last night. Who are your two teams that you want to talk about?
Okay. I want to talk about the Dallas Cowboys. And I think I'm going to talk about the Buccaneers.
Okay.
And I think you should talk about your Dolphins since you're wearing the garb, right?
And there's one other team.
The colors. And I think you got to cover the Texans.
The Houston Texans.
They're the surprise this season.
Yep.
I mean, we could sit there right now and say Dak Prescott is playing MVP football. He's had his amazing 4 weeks of football. Even with the loss to the Eagles, it was close.
Sure.
Right? But then we got to actually look at D'Amico Ryans and then C.J. Stroud. I mean, you're at 19 touchdowns? Is that correct?
Something like 16?
Maybe 16,
but
one interception.
1 or 2 interceptions.
But that team came out of nowhere.
Second in the league in passing yards.
I mean, so you're looking at, we know for a fact this could be the rookie of the year. And C.J. Stroud.
Yeah. Could
be the coach of the year. And if this kid continues to roll like he's rolling, there's no doubt in my mind he could be the MVP as a rookie. And I don't even know if that's ever even happened.
I don't think so.
So we would have to look that up. Somebody get that answer for us. But anyway, what I want to talk about with the Cowboys, if it's fair.
Please.
They're playing great football. You don't say just
she's so entertained by the Dallas Cowboys. She's caught. She don't want to hear about the Dallas Cowboys. She wants to talk about the Tampa Bay Bucs, man.
Get it out. So
she's laughing at the idea that Dallas Cowboys are a legitimate Super Bowl.
No. So anyway.
She's laughing at this. She thinks Dallas is a Super Bowl. The idea that Dallas has she thinks they're foul, not fish.
All right. So this is what I'll say though. If you look at Dallas right now, there's no question that they are contending. No doubt about it. Why do I give them a hard time? Because they'll blow a game like the Cardinals, and then they'll come into the Giants and beat them by, in 2 games, 77 to 10, or whatever the number is. Close in there. So you just don't see enough competition right now So a Dallas fan's going to come back to me. He's going to go, oh, well, a game is a game. They're all pros. That is not what we're talking about. We're talking about championship level games that we know of. And at the end of the day, their next 2 games now is going to be Carolina and then Washington with Sam Howell. They've gotten really good with Eric Bieniemy being their offense coordinator now. So that could be a tough game because they sure as heck took the Philadelphia Eagles to the wire. So that's one team I want to talk about. I think they definitely could be in the Super Bowl. I really do. Okay. Now, the Leighton Vander Esch injury kind of bothers me a little bit now because he's their signal caller. So, and now his injuries, I mean, it seems to be systemic year in and year out. Head, shoulders, knees, and toes, right?
Yeah.
Those seem to be the things that get rid of people, right? And it seems to be his neck all the time or his back. So hopefully he can come back because I think he's a key piece of that defense, even though I don't think he's like a Michael Parsons anymore, obviously. But I think that was a big injury. So we'll figure that out with Dallas. Now let me lead into you with the Miami Dolphins because I think the Dolphins are very similar to Dallas this year, where they're marking up the Broncos with an NFL record of like 77 points. Yeah. And then all of a sudden they lose a couple games that you're like scratching your head like, what was that?
Exactly. I want to point this out about the Miami Dolphins. For anybody that's a Dolphin fan listening to this, if you don't like it, root for another team. I don't want to hear this garbage, okay? I've been a Dolphins fan since I was 5 years old. All right, I'm going to be 45 in February.
So you are clinically depressed.
I'm clinically depressed. So you don't know the garbage I've had to endure since I'm going to even say, since Don Shula got pushed out the door. They say he was retired, but he was pushed out. All right, things weren't that hot with Jimmy Johnson, contrary to popular belief. Yes, they won, but this guy tried to turn Dan Marino into Troy Aikman, which, no disrespect to Troy Aikman, but you know where I'm going with that, Dan. You don't turn one quarterback into something he's not, okay?
No, people try it.
But they've tried it. But, Dan Marino was Dan Marino. Troy Aikman was Troy Aikman. Both great quarterbacks, but they were 2 different quarterbacks.
Absolutely.
I mean, then we had the Wannstedt years where, okay, they made the playoffs, but they couldn't get past that. Then after Wannstedt got fired, it was just a whole mess. You had Nick Saban, who spent 2 years there, where the front office passed on Drew Brees, who became one of the great quarterbacks in NFL history, to take Captain Lake Minnetonka, who Dante Culpepper and his 2 bum knees. He leaves for Alabama 24 hours for saying, I'm not going anywhere, which frankly was for the best for both parties. But then they turn around and replace him with Cam freaking Cameron, who had 17, 18 wins at college in Indiana in 7 years, okay? That didn't work out. Then we go through the litany of coordinators. I like Tony Sparano a lot. I think he overachieved what he had, God rest his soul. We had Joe Philbin, we had Adam Gase, we had Brian Flores. Now it seems like they finally got a coach that's has them in the right direction. But as you mentioned, they come in this year and they get in there with the teams they play at the level of their competition. They go against teams that they're superior to, and they steamroll them. 70 points, 50-point win over the Broncos. We haven't seen that since the 1966 season where a team had 70 hung on them. And neither of us were born then, okay? But then they step up in competition against Kansas City, against Philadelphia, even against Buffalo at the time, and they get beat. They get bullied by the bully, and then they bullied the subpar teams. Again, them and Dallas are one and the same because you look at Dallas' schedule, they've bullied the subpar teams, and then they get, to a degree, bullied by the upper echelon.
Except for the Eagles game. That's very close. But the 49ers.
Well, and I mean, we even saw the the Kansas City game. Well, saw the Miami-Kansas City game, and it wasn't that uncompetitive either. So, I mean, to me, there's close games, or, there's an old saying about close games. The only thing close is good at is horseshoes.
Right.
I mean, that doesn't matter. At the end of the day, you got to win that one. So until Miami can pick up that upper echelon win, I can't hold them as a viable Super Bowl contender. And when I say fish nor fowl, I don't know if this team's going to give me a run deep into the playoffs for the first time since 1994, or they're going to get beat in the first round.
Yeah, and I think something else to add before we move on.
Yeah.
If you think about it, we're in the third quarter of the season already.
Right.
Everybody keeps saying there's a lot of ball to play still. But the next 3 or 4 weeks really starts to shape the exact playoff pictures we're going to see.
Right.
How the seeding goes, where it's going to go, who's going to get the bye. We'll know who's going to get the bye pretty much in a week or 2.
Right.
Just based off this next 2 Philadelphia games. If they win them, they're pretty much in a position because, I mean, it's going to be hard to beat them down the road.
Right.
Now, they got a tough stretch coming up. Dallas picks up their tough stretch after the next 2 games.
Right.
And then we'll see, because then they got to play Seattle and then Philly again. And then they got to go through their division games there at the end. So I don't know. I don't want to throw more shade on them because I get a lot of heat. But I think Dak Prescott is playing the best he's ever played the last 4 games. And what I really like is look at all the injuries in the NFL right now at the quarterback position. Dallas is set up really good. And we'll get into that and talk about that trade with Trey Lance. But what I love is if Dak does get hurt, they've got Cooper Rush still. That's a known winner. Did you go 5-1 last year or 4-1?
Yeah.
And then now you got Trey Lance sitting there. So look across the league, though, who just fizzled out all of a sudden. You thought Buffalo, the wheels fell off, but now all of a sudden we lose Joe Burrow and Deshaun Watson.
Right.
So all of a sudden, Miami, even though they lost a couple games, they're looking pretty good right now. We know the Ravens are strong.
Yeah.
Let's just be honest. I mean, them at Kansas City, the way it looks right now, it's pretty tough.
Yeah.
So just a quick one on Tampa. This is a big game for them. Now, a lot of y'all are writing Tampa Bay off. And the 49ers have been suspect this year. So if Tampa could go in there and do what they did to Nashville and stop McCaffrey and put some pressure on Purdy, and they win that game, because there is a problem in the NFC South. It's a dysfunctional league, dumpster fire at best. So last week, the Saints and the Falcons come back to the Bucs. So they both lose, we win, now we're a game out.
Right.
Now, if they beat the 49ers tomorrow, now we're talking a tie for the division with momentum going in like they had in the beginning of the season. So I'm not saying Tampa Bay is going to do anything remarkable, people. I don't want to hear about it. But there is a good chance, even if they lose to the 49ers, they're still in it. And that division winner at best now is going to be 10-7. So finish up with the Texans so we get to move on anyway.
The Texans, you want to talk about a team, and I use this phrase a lot, the most dangerous team, or in other sports, the most dangerous individual is the one that has nothing to lose.
Absolutely.
You want to talk about dumpster fires? Dan, there was not a bigger dumpster fire in the NFL, we can say even over the last 3 seasons, than the Houston Texans, all right? Had back-to-back years where they one-and-done coaches, right? They got rid of Lovie Smith after 1 year. They had David Culley after 1 year. Even the last year of Bill O'Brien was not good. They had the messy divorce with Deshaun Watson, which now looks like an absolute brilliant move by the team. Nothing went good there. Then they bring in DeMeco Ryans. In one offseason, they've turned their fortunes around. They bring in DeMeco Ryans. They draft C.J. Stroud, which was highly criticized because of this absolute nonsensical argument that people have. And we're going to certainly do that in another video, talk about this myth that people have that is totally wrong. And look at him now. I mean, we talk about Stroud and what he's done so far, second in the league in passing, 2 interceptions, 15, 16 touchdown passes.
It was just 1 interception.
Yeah, I think 1 or 2, you're right, 1 or 2. We'll double check on that. But, the fact is he has this absurd amount of low interception numbers. I mean, his QB rate isn't that hot, but you got to look at who he's throwing the football to. I mean, name me one receiver on that team, Dan, that really jumps out at you. Oh, my God, that guy. I mean, you're talking Nico Collins,
Schultz.
John Metz. Dalton Schultz is okay.
He's a nice target.
He's nice, but I mean, we're not talking about him in the same level. We're talking about, we're not talking about Travis Kelce. I mean, he's good, but he's not great. He's throwing the football to Robert Woods, a bunch of guys that are okay, 3rd and 4th, maybe Tank Dell, but he's making the most of what he has. And,
If you look at,
and he's in his rookie year.
yeah, but if you look at the completion stats, Baker's right there with Dak.
Yeah.
And he's not, what was he, 61 maybe, 62?
Yeah.
I mean, it's not bad.
Right.
So.
But let's think about it too, though. That's another division, wide open. Wide open. In Houston, I'm looking at
They're winning it now. And guess what now? Indy's injured.
Yep.
And then the Jags, right? I think they're level with them now because the Jags just lost.
Yep. And Tennessee, they look good for 1 week with Will Levis, and then the last few have been not so good.
I'll talk about that because they look beautiful, but our Bucks were just that much better.
Absolutely. But
That's why you're wearing a hat right now, because you didn't believe me.
But hey, Tampa, though, they should win a division. Houston, though, I'm looking at their schedule. There ain't no reason why they can't win us with 11 or 12 wins. I'm looking at the remaining schedule and think about that. This team didn't win 12 games in 4 years.
I know.
So you're looking at, like I said, potential rookie of the year, potential MVP, coach of the year. Great job by Nick Caserio. So those are our 4 teams to keep an eye
I
on.
think you can even touch on Minnesota a little bit, going 5-0 after a miserable start, because our Bucks gave them a bad introduction to the league. Right, in the first game we beat them, but Minnesota was a playoff team the year before. So I think we got to consider them now. Will Dobbs be able to continue this momentum with the absence of Kirk Cousins the remaining of the season? Because this is another story we'll talk about. But that has been kind of the story when he was at Arizona, beat Dallas, get shipped off, all of a sudden we're in Minnesota and he wins 2 in a row, right?
Yeah.
So this could be another interesting story. So there's so many things right now, we can't even put our mind to it because this week, going into the third quarter, it's going to be interesting to figure this out. But anyway, that's enough of that. We're going to end here and we're going to pick up a new subject here in just a minute. This episode of Last Call was brought to you by SJP Snapshots and Minx Inc. Clothing and Apparel.